This is Chaotic Structure by Verses in Motion, organic conversations with creative minds.
Constantly walking the road unknown, never knowing the weather being shown. Whether obstacles will be blown into a bare path by the winds, the clouds can bring a muddy way. It makes trekking through harder with each step. Determination is needed to move forward, never knowing what to expect, or if the soul is ready to travel the road unknown. Hello, I am Andrew Scott. My book is entitled The Road Unknown, and this is Chaotic Structure Podcast by Verses in Motion.
The first episode of a new series by Verses in Motion dedicated to authors, writers, poets, and storytellers. This is Chaotic Structure by Verses in Motion, episode 1. And I'm your host, producer, and writer of this show. There's a little surprise that I'm going to announce by the end of this episode. And, we are all about organic conversations with creative minds, as we do on our other series, which is Versus Emotion, more about music and other kind of arts and crafts. But this is a very special writer corner, let's call it that way. And I am so glad to have on this first episode with us somebody really special and super talented that I know since over 16 years. We've been supporting each other. He's one of the admins of the Facebook group of Verses in Motion. Super talented author, poet, writer, photographer, Andrew Scott. Welcome to Chaotic Structure by Versus Emotion, Andrew. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, finally, we have a proper conversation that is not just through the screen online, but it's
Yes.
actually it's actually a live conversation. And I know that you have contributed so much to Versus Emotion throughout the years. I'm truly grateful for what you have been doing, and your posts always have something really special that catch and capture the audience attention. Um, but you're here today not only to talk about what you do online, but to talk about
Right.
your recent publication. Congrats!
Thank you.
It's just out since only a few days. The Road Unknown.
Yes.
That's the publication. That's your book.
Yes.
Um, let's start by saying by just give me a little bit of a snap kind of storytelling about why you decided to write this book and what really inspired you. What was the motivation behind it?
Well, it's like anything that I do, like when it comes to writing, it starts with a title. Okay. And a couple of years ago, the title for this book actually hit me. I was out doing what I do in Eastern Canada, which was hiking with a camera just for relaxation. And I took a picture of a walking trail that I was on. And as soon as that happened, the title of the poem, The Road Unknown, popped in my head. So right there and then, I was like, the next poetry book I put out is going to be called The Road Unknown. And it came time to start putting it together. And of course, I wrote a poem called The Road Unknown. And then, like previous books, I went through my, I'm going to say, catalog of poems and started just picking out poems that I thought would be good to include in the book. And so there's poems that are 20 years old and there's poems that are a year old. So that's
Wow, is it like a time capsule? We
it's
talk a lot
almost
about time capsules.
it almost is, and it's kind of funny when you start doing stuff like that because you go back and it's like, well, if I could rewrite that now, but I resist the temptation of rewriting them and just go, okay, this was my mind frame 20 years ago. This is a snippet of what I was thinking. Whether that thinking has changed or evolved, this is what I was thinking 20 years ago.
And I think that what you just described is almost like a journey throughout
Right.
your writing career, let's call it that way.
Right.
um you are a photographer as well. So when you write, I always notice that there is a vivid imagery
Right.
about your words. So it's not only descriptive, but it's very much evocative of, places and
Hmm.
people and emotions and atmospheres you have been living through your hiking activities and your
Yes.
photography activities. How does that translate in this book? How does that transpose into the pages of this book?
Well, when I'm writing, I try to visualize what I'm writing. I could be sitting there with my little notepad on my lap, and I'm trying to picture what I'm writing, or I try to feel what I'm writing. And I always say there's a piece of me in there somewhere with the majority of everything that I write. And so, depending on what I'm writing about, it's up to you to find out where I am. So I'm just always trying to picture or feel or have that in my mind. It's like any book that I read, the best books that I've ever read, I can picture it. So that's, what I'm writing is what I'm seeing or feeling.
Oh, that's really a great way to describe it. And also, have you um, discovered like new ways of storytelling? Because when you write poetry, I think for me is very much of an emotional connection with the
Right.
moment, right? But when you
Right.
write a book that is more like of a narrative kind of piece, then
Right.
you enter a different you wear a different hat a little bit.
A little bit.
Did that happen to you while you
A
were
little bit,
writing this?
yeah. Like when you're I'm going to say when I was putting it together, I was wearing a different hat, and without realizing it by times, a lot of the writings that I chose for the book were journeys, or I'm walking a trail or a path, or evolution, and expanding my thoughts.
And you are a native of Fredericton, which is a beautiful place,
Yes, it is.
and it's very much every time I look at your photographs or I see your photographs around it's like breathtaking, like nature dominates that place, right? And it's like
Right.
you can get lost into the beautiful
I have.
embrace of nature over there. And um, what does it mean to you, that aspect of, is it really a big part of the way you write or what you write?
Well, I'm gonna say yes and no. Like it's like in Canada, we're divided into provinces, and the province that I live in is very small, but there's a lot of nature. So I could go anywhere in this province within 2 hours and find a trail, and I've always found it very relaxing to take my camera with me. Sometimes I'm listening to music, sometimes I'm listening to water, and it clears my mind. So
Yes,
once
yes.
I have that, and I have come back from those hikes and thought of topics to write about, or different topics.
it
Um,
does it does ground you, doesn't it? Nature, it's like
Absolutely.
it's got that grounding kind of effect.
There's it's it's I just find it for like mentally it's grounding. You realize how small you are in the general scheme of things, your priorities, and then I'll come home, and maybe I'll be going through the photos and it'll inspire something, or I'll have a thought while I'm out, while I'm trying to clear my mind, and that will inspire something.
And when you were writing The Road Unknown, which is, a mix of poetry and prose, who did
Yes.
you have in mind as an audience, an ideal kind of typical
Me,
target audience?
me.
Yes.
I like it, and this is going to sound a little selfish, but it starts and stops with me. I do realize people are going to read some of this, but if I'm not honest in it, or it doesn't challenge me, or like I've there's a reoccurring joke with a couple of my friends when I first started writing because they just remember crumpled paper being thrown across a room, you know, because it was either insincere or I didn't get it right. Where now it's just these are my thoughts and I just write them out. And it's really nice when people can relate to them.
Is there any part of this book that really screams, this is me, Andrew, and this is any parts in particular that you recognize as being
Uh,
just
I
the
think all of
expression
it.
of your soul?
I think all of it does,
Mhm.
right? Like it's like you mentioned. I will write about any given topic, whether it's poetry, prose, whatnot, um, because well, those are my thoughts. So I'm all through there. Whether it's a story that came into my head, but I can honestly tell you where that story came from. Sometimes, so I'm all through there. I'm like weaved in and out. Um, there's a lot of watching, watching others, how I felt about it. There's believing in yourself, you know,
What
and
is
honestly
the
knowing that any trail that you take, you just don't know where it goes.
yes? What is the one question as a writer, poet, or artist in general that really bothers you that people ask you all the time? I've got one.
Was the one question that bothers me?
Yes, as a writer, poet, people,
Oh,
sometimes they ask you
jeez.
such
I'm not gonna
annoying
say bothers me.
questions.
I don't know how to answer
Mm.
what I'm doing while I write.
Ooh, I've never been asked that actually.
I have, and I didn't know how to answer it because they were like, do you, shut all the lights down and do you have a specific place that you write or anything like that? And I never know how to answer that because I could
Oh,
write
that kind of where are you creatively positioned?
right.
Why?
Like I could be on my couch or I could be at my desk or I have written with a
Yeah.
notepad. I could at a coffee shop and
Sometimes you're
it's
driving and things come into your head and then you just remember them and put them down to paper. But
yeah, and it's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
very hard question to answer because you just don't know where the inspiration's going to hit. But
Yeah,
I've been asked that
that's
question several times, and I'm just like, I could
you
be
answer
anywhere.
something different every
Yeah,
time.
and I remember once I was asked the same question like four times, four different ways, and I was like, the answer was the same. It just could be anywhere.
Yeah. Oh wow, they insisted as well. Okay, that's not
Oh yeah,
okay. Um, of course, the your book cover, I feel, is one of your photographs, right?
yes,
Yes,
yes.
and that photograph represents what exactly?
Well, that was actually the trail. That was the picture I took that inspired the poem.
Oh, that's when you were on the
Yeah.
hiking path. Okay. Oh, okay. So that's and everything started. You know what is interesting, really, about your book? That everything started with a poem, and things can start differently, right? For
Yes.
different reasons and in different ways. But the fact that we both write verses is actually really close to my imagination because I actually see one of my poems sometimes becoming even a little video
Yeah.
or developing into something that is a different kind of visual art technique.
Right.
Have you ever thought about creating videos out of your poems and books?
I do have a couple on a
Hmm.
YouTube channel.
Oh wow, what's the YouTube channel? Please tell
It's
us.
just it's just Andrew Scott.
Okay, so we're gonna go and check them out.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll try to send it to you.
okay, thank you. Yeah, that would be great. I think sometimes, because when you also have an eye for images, you write seeing the story in your head while you're
Right.
writing it. And so sometimes it just becomes a natural progression, that it gets to become a sequence of images in a video or something like that. You
Right.
have more than 200 publications worldwide in many different kind
Yes.
of, specific and
Yes.
very, particular and very also successful magazines and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, which is the one that actually, okay, I'm going to ask a difficult question now. Which one really made you more emotional about um, having been featured there?
Yahoo.
Yeah. What?
Yeah,
Tell us the story. Yeah.
years ago, they had a writing form that they used to
Hmm.
have for artists. They don't do it anymore. Now they would give you a theme, and I would look and search through my stuff and see if I had something that matched the theme, of course. And I would submit it. And the first couple of times they rejected it.
Oh, okay.
And rejection
That
happens.
happens.
You have to be used to that stuff. But the one that they accepted, it was like a huge fist pump because well, they had rejected two or three of them before, but they accepted one. And I was like, yes.
That made you really happy.
Yeah. And anytime that happens, like I don't take for granted any publication that publishes my works because I also know that in there could be a rejection or a non acceptance, and it's really kind of cool.
Hmm.
I don't know how else to put it. It's very humbling and very cool.
That's great to hear. Yeah, we're gonna actually post it on the Facebook group if you can,
Okay.
so it will remind us of that moment.
Yes.
In Versus Emotion podcasts, we love the authentic conversation, and we also like to ask one question all the time, which is, what is your legacy of light? I'm not talking about material possessions. I'm asking you, when or what is it, actually, what is it that you want to leave behind as a legacy of light? Apart from your writings, what do you want people to remember you by?
That I enjoyed life.
And you represented that in your writings as well.
Right. That I just enjoyed life.
That's
And
amazing. Yes. That nobody has asked you so far, and you really hoped that somebody would ask.
oh, I can't answer that because I'm not very good at answering questions.
So you don't have the, well, you seem to be
If
very
I
good
was
at
able to
answering.
if I was able to, step aside from the questions, I'd be okay. So I can't think of any.
Okay, let's take it away from a question. Let's
All right.
say which piece, and I know you recorded, a little piece for us to publish
Right.
before we start the podcast. We will start the podcast with that, so that our audience can have a feel and taste of the content of your book. Is there a particular passage of your book or anything in particular that you want to share that you think that people will actually connect with in particular, even if it's only
Oh,
a couple of words?
I'm thinking now. You ready?
Yes,
Uh, this is just three sentences or three lines or
please.
okay.
Yes.
To yourself be true each day. Live courage. Be you.
And it's not always easy, right? Because there are a
Right.
lot of like influences that come from all over the place, and sometimes they derail your path and they derail you on your path, and so you have to always go back there.
Right.
Can you give us how do you've been part of Versus Emotion for such a long time, and
Yes.
um, can you give us the a sort of phrase or definition of how you see Versus Emotion and why you've been part of it for such a long time?
Well, why is because you're seeing such different styles and different artistic expressions, right? And then it's always nice to see what other people's thoughts are. And it's all like that's why I've been there so long. And that's essentially it. You're watching other people evolve too, and you're sharing in other people's successes,
Yeah, and it's really worldwide. We don't have any borders of
right?
any kind.
Like
We
it's
don't have,
really
yeah,
neat that way.
yeah, we don't have any borders of any kind. I mean, except if you publish something obscene, of course, the
Well,
obscenity,
yeah,
but
but I
then it's relative. But yeah,
yeah.
we get into too much of a discussion about that nowadays. It's not
Yeah,
worth it. Yeah,
that
it's not worth
that's
it.
a different conversation.
Yeah, where can we find your you also have published two books of photography,
Yes.
and where can we find them, and how what when you published them, was it, you must have added a few words, right? You must have like probably a description, or a way you describe the photographs in the books. How did you set them up?
Um, well, the poetry books are just poetry, but the photography books, where I'm going to say yesterday I went to a community with my camera. And so I generally told the story of the community, like the origins, how long that community has been around, and I would tell stories of why I was there or any adventure that happened while I was there. Like in one of the books, I'm going around taking pictures of old farm equipment. Well, it was actually the farm that I grew up in.
Wow,
So
okay.
I'm saying the changes that have happened throughout the years. And I if it inspires a poem or a writing, well that writing is also included. So I'm giving the history of the town that I'm in, any adventures that I had, like either on walking on the trails or why I was there. And if it inspired a poem, I would include that too.
Oh, fantastic! So it's totally authentic and spontaneous, the
Yeah,
way it's been done. Oh, that's great. That's what I like, because sometimes only photography can be heavy, right? But if you
right,
feel that spontaneous kind of narrative thread behind it, then you know that some of them are to be interpreted by the audience, but some others have their own kind of context, right? So
right.
I like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do like that. So we're almost close to the last couple of questions, I believe.
Okay, I'm
The
ready.
first one, I think, is about where can we find you? We know we can find you on Versus Emotion, but where else? Where else can we find you?
You can find me and my works
Hmm.
um, two different places. I have a website, andrewmscott.com, and there's actually a little store there that if you want to purchase a book, you're more than welcome to. And you can find my works also on Amazon.
Fantastic.
It's Andrew M. Scott, and generally the title of a book or whatnot, like The Road Unknown. Yeah,
Okay, fantastic. And then you're also on Instagram, of course, and then
I'm on
social media,
Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook.
the YouTube channel, Andrew Scott, where the
Uh,
videos are.
yes,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
if you because Andrew Scott's a very common name, there's also another page called Andrew Scott, writer photographer.
Fantastic. And the last question, which is not going to be the last because we are going to announce a little kind of, news by the end of this. The last question is really what's next?
Good question. I don't know. I haven't planned
That's
that far ahead.
good. That's good. Well,
I
one thing I know. Now, actually, one thing what's
I do know
next.
one thing, but we're gonna wait for that. But I mean, creative wise, it's whatever hits me.
Mm,
I don't force it,
that's great. That's the best way to be, creatively
right? And
speaking. Yeah.
and so in a year's time, I could decide, all right, it's time to put together another book of photography or poetry or challenge myself to do something else.
And we will be looking out for whatever you decide to do. But
Yeah.
yeah, so in the meantime, All I can say for now is that we'll see each other again very soon on video.
Yes.
Um, because the big news is that you will be co-hosting with me a few of these chaotic structure episodes by Versus Emotion. So
Yes.
we're really excited here at Versus Emotion about that. Um, and this will be the start, hopefully, of a long term collaboration with you on the air, if
Oh,
we want to
absolutely.
call
Oh,
podcast on the air.
I'm very excited about it.
That's great. I guess the only thing I'm going to say at the end of this show is that I really thank you for your contributions. As I said at the beginning, people like you, artists like you, are the soul of Versus Emotion. And without you all, guys, and thanks to all the participants, to all the groups around social media and everywhere we are, without you and the other fellow writers, and poets, and authors, and photographers, and artists of any kind,
Right.
Versus Emotion would not exist. So uh, everybody's very much part of, you know, is a protagonist at Versus Emotion. So thank you again for that. Looking forward to the next steps with us. And The Road Unknown is available on Amazon, on your website, on your
Yes.
personal website, and they can find you on social media as well, so that anybody who has a question about your creative moods can, can do so on
Yeah.
social media and probably get no reply from Andrew.
Sometimes I can be incredibly shy when you ask me questions.
I can see that. But you've been great. Actually, you've been a great guest, and you'll be a great host. I'm sure of it, or a co-host. So, Andrew, thank you again. Chaotic Structure first episode finishes here with you, but more to come. And yes, everybody, buy The Road Unknown, Andrew Scott's new book.
Thank you.
Versus Emotion Podcast, organic conversations with creative minds.